The beast, B. Adiban, takes on the master trickster Nihal Sarin. It's a clash of generations at the Qatar Masters Open 2024. This is the penultimate round. Adiban has the white pieces. Nihal has black as he adjusts all his pieces into the game. Nihal is currently rated 2676 while Adiban has lost a bit of rating recently. He's at 2535, but he'll definitely be wanting to beat his young opponent. Takes his time here. Adiban opens the game with 1 e4. Let's see what Nihal Sarin comes up with. Whoa, knight c6. Known as the Nimzowitsch opening. Nihal plays it to maybe get his opponent out of the opening. Adiban is like, do you want to go e5, Nihal? Not really. He sticks to d6. And Adiban takes the center. Now white has a nice opening position. Let's see what Nihal does. He puts his knight out on f6, attacking the pawn on e4. Adiban brings his knight out to c3. It's risky to play such openings against the beast Adiban because he's known for his attacking style of play. But right now, he's just developing his pieces calmly. Plays bishop to e2. Black goes bishop to g7 here. And now, white castles. So a good move here, and now I think black will also castle it out. That's what he does. Short castle on the board. And now Adiban thinking about what should be his next move. He pushes the pawn. Knight e5 is definitely possible, but after knight takes, pawn takes, it results in a doubled pawn. So Nihal goes knight b8. He undevelops. But he tells Adiban that you have lost a bit of flexibility with your pawns. So now comes the move c6, striking in the center. And a4 is played, gaining space on the queen side. Nihal tries to fight back on the queen side, pushing his pawn to a5. And Adiban goes h3. Maybe he wants to put his bishop on e3 and doesn't want to worry about knight g4. Knight comes out to a6. So from c6, the knight went back. Now to a6, maybe to c5, maybe to b4. Let's see where it goes. Adiban puts his bishop on g5. Maybe he just wants queen d2, rook d1, knight to d7. I like Adiban's position here with queen d2. He can put a lot of pressure. And that's exactly what he does. Nihal has to play carefully now. He plays this little move rook e8. And the point is, I think if you go bishop h6, Nihal wants to avoid the trade and his rook would no longer be hanging on f8. Adiban anyway tells his opponent, let's trade. Because if this bishop is gone, the black king will become a bit soft. So Nihal goes back bishop h8, keeping the bishop on the board. And now the queen comes into f4, getting the queen into the attacking zone here with a bishop here and a knight joining in. It can become dangerous. Now knight to e5 played by Nihal Sarin. And Adiban brings his rook right into the center of the board. So a fine position for white right now. Nihal goes queen b6. I love how he's put a hoodie on his head. Queen b6 starts to really put pressure on the b2 pawn. Adiban gets his queen back, but he's happy at the fact that his rook is now into the game and not outside here on a1. Knight goes to c5. For Nihal, he has 1 hour 2 minutes. Adiban has 41 minutes on the clock. And Adiban brings bishop e3. Not the best move, but yes, clear plan to pin the knight on c5. Knight takes f3 played. And now if g takes f3, of course, the pawn is hanging, so bishop takes on f3. And will Nihal be brave enough to chop this off to somehow weaken the position? Not really. He goes bishop d7, calmly playing here, but AD, there you go. He's going on the attack. Adiban wants h5. The queen comes into b4, attacking the pawn here on a4. Also putting a bit of pressure here. But Adiban goes even further into the attack. He goes e5. What a move there. Bishop takes on e5. I was wondering if he had anything in mind for d into e5. It was also possible. Bishop e5, he takes on c5. Okay. You can't take with the pawn because rook takes e5 is hanging. Adhiban is taking the attack to his opponent. Queen takes c5 and now he's going to sack his rook on e5. Yes, he does. Rook takes e5. So sack the pawn. Now an exchange. But with that, he's got the king all open and all alone with the queen getting in. This will be something. And Adhiban, does he go in? No, first he brings his knight in to e4. And the queen is attacked here. So the queen goes back to b6. I'm a bit worried here for Nihal's king. A knight, a bishop, a queen and a pawn all near the king. Well, he goes queen at 6. And now, threatening knight g5. If you play f6, there's already h5. So Nihal chops off the pawn. Now very important for Adhiban to take on d5 with the rook. But instead he goes knight to g5, a mistake. The point was rook d5, rook a d8, there was rook d6. Threatening knight f6 and this would have been an equal position. But with knight g5, now he's attacking here and wants to checkmate this way. So Nihal has a brilliant move here. Queen f6, defending f7 and also the h8 square. He finds it. You can bank on Nihal to find these moves. Maybe Adhiban missed it. Maybe he had something more in his mind, which was bishop d5. I think his calculation still continues. f7 is hanging. So e6 has been played. And now, he goes bishop takes b7 with 16 minutes on the clock. AD is like, I want to take your rook. Also, I'm threatening your bishop. So Nihal protects it with rook a d8. Now the knight comes back, attacks the queen. If you go here, I'm coming back to g5, threatening knight f6 check. And let's see. He goes queen to e7, played here. And now queen to g5. Threatening knight f6 check here. But this time it seems like this is lost because Nihal found the best move. He didn't go back queen g7. He found queen e7. And the point of this is that now knight f6 is a threat. But Nihal has a classy move bishop c8, which Adhiban might have missed. Because knight f6, you go king f8 now. And you can't take the rook because your own rook is hanging. And that is a big problem. So he takes on d8. But then after rook d8, Nihal is an exchange up. Complete exchange up. Bishop c6. And yes, Adhiban did attack with all the energy he had. But unfortunately, Nihal's defense has stood strong here. Is there some kind of a fortress that Adhiban can set up? Or is there any counterplay he can look for? He pushes his c-pawn, which is a passed pawn. But Nihal is a monster when it comes to conversion. He's very good. He offers the trade of the bishop. Bishop goes to b5. And Nihal thinks for a bit. Takes the bishop here on b5. Well, if a b5, you have rook b1. So he plays cb5. But still you have rook b1. And now b2 is hanging. He goes knight to d2, attacking the rook. Rook takes on b2. And now knight to c4, attacking the pawn on a5. Rook comes back to b4. Takes the pawn on a5. And he gives a check. This is typical Nihal Sarin. He understands that when the king comes up to g3 or goes back to g1, I can snatch the pawn, and later you can see the point here. When the knight goes to c6, you can't get to b4, but you can give a check and come here. So that's the main point of giving a check. It's these little subtleties which Nihal is just the best in the world when it comes to it. He's very good. He's very good. And now rook b3, attacking the pawn. If you try to defend it, well, it's just very passive and black starts to push the pawn. So Adhiban takes the pawn on e5. He takes the pawn on b5 now, Nihal. Knight goes to g4. You are an exchange plus a pawn down, so Adhiban could very well resign the game. You can see he's just calculating there, maybe what went wrong, what could I have done better. G3 played, hoping somehow to maybe trap the rook with f4 and knight e5. And now h5 has been played. So the threat is, if you go en passant here, it's a checkmate, and if you move the knight, you lose f2. So Adhiban resigns and Nihal Sarin scores a win. This was a very interesting game of attack and defense. In the end, Adhiban made a mistake and Nihal took home the full point.